then we have a drought. And if we have climate change and the drought is more extreme, then we have a crop failure. So whether it's climate change or malnutrition, millets are really important for the future.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's a worldwide thing or just India, but certainly in India, they're honoring this year as the year of the millet. And so I think it's being pushed into the public domain, into the public eye, so that people become more and more aware of the value of millet. And of course, the other thing is that I know that we're also doing not just organic agriculture, but we're also doing what we call yogic farming. And in that, what had happened was that people in Maharashtra, when they were going through a period of drought, farmers who were already meditators decided, well, in ancient times, everything used to be done with prayer. There was nothing in which there wasn't prayer. And so what they started to do was to meditate first on the soil as they were turning it around, then on the seeds. They would meditate on those seeds, filling them with not just the physical energy that the seed has, but filling it with spiritual energy also. And when they would go planting, the whole family would go planting, again, sharing time and meditation together. And through the period of growth and so on, everyday meditation, harvest time, again, the same. And so several universities have got interested in all of this. And so they're doing a lot of research and they're finding more and more value and benefit, not just in the content and the nourishment of the seeds, but also of the soil itself. And I didn't know that millet had such important impact on the soil itself. So it's very valuable having to share the scientific input from you, Vandana. But I know that from our side, we've been doing this yogic approach, and that's been highly, highly beneficial. And now it's taking place not only in Maharashtra, but several other states around the world.
Yeah. Jayanti, the Year of Millets is a United Nations Year of Millets. It's for the whole world.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because that means it's getting high profile across the world. Sometimes people think that millet sounds boring, and it is boring, but just imagine 70 different recipes that were created for the G20 can be made available to everyone. And so it's definitely food that can be used in banquets, not just for the, little farmer and their family, but for everyone.
And at Navdanya, we have been not just saving the seeds of millet and growing millet and doing research on millet, but as I said, this book has not just the recipes, but we used to have cafes where we realized the young people are, looking for new, as we called it, new ways with old grains. So we make pizzas with millet. We make cookies with millets. We make muffins with millet. Of course, our rotis, our kheers. There's nothing, and it's not that we are inventing the millet diet. This was the diet. It was the diet which did not destroy water, and it's the diets that can come back and be mainstream. But I think a lot of it has to do with how we were made to think. Some of the festivals we've done with millets is Black is Beautiful. Because why did people look down on millets? Because its flour is dark. Kali hai. Roti kali hai. Are kali hai to achhi hai na? Sabko gore hone ki zarurat nahi. Everyone doesn't have to be fair and white. And food doesn't have to be white. White sugar is not the best for health.
It's a killer.
Our gur is delicious. And it has very complex sugar molecules, so it doesn't give you all the problems. White rice, polished, again, dangerous. Refined flour, refined oils, which have removed everything that is nutritious in them. So I think it's time to not just liberate the world from its bias of monocultures, but I think it's bias of whiteness. I mean, of course, your sari is so beautiful, sister, but this idea that food must lose its different colors. In Ayurveda, they talk about eating 6 tastes in your every meal because our gut microbiome needs all the diversity. And a simple way for people to eat diversity was to say, eat all the colors. Eat a bit of green, eat a bit of yellow, eat a bit of orange, eat a bit of white. And at the deeper level in Ayurveda, they talk about the different tastes that you must have. Yeah. Because all of that is necessary for our health. And our work in Navdani has shown how biodiversity is vital for the food system. I'm very happy to say that now the FAO and all agencies are picking this up. Our research has shown that the more biodiversity you grow per acre, the more nutrition you grow, the more water you conserve. And on our farm right now, these beautiful millet plants with the beans climbing up them. And the beans are providing nitrogen, and the millets are providing the support for the beans. Such beautiful expression of symbiosis and mutuality. And I think, you all greet, it's Om Shanti. I think a food system of Om Shanti is a food system of diversity, not using chemicals,
Absolutely.
and regenerating, conserving the soil and water while you grow the biodiversity.
Two other aspects I want to bring in before we get to Shantana's questions. One is the fact that you mentioned Ayurveda and tastes. They say that there's 14 different tastes and flavors in Ayurveda. And what happens sometimes is that there are one or two that overpower all the others and don't allow you to experience the flavor and the taste of the others. And so we discovered that if you cook without onions and garlic, you actually, because those two overpower the other flavors. And so if you cook without those two things, then the food is that much healthier and tastier also. And so that was an interesting discovery for me to know that. And the other thing is that, of course, whatever are the vibrations that you prepare food with, those vibrations go into the food. Everybody talks about mum's cooking. And what was happening with mum's cooking, of course, was that she was cooking with love. And so she was cooking because of her love for the family and so on. And now in many places, they have apartments in which the kitchen occupies a very tiny amount of space. And if you think about a farmhouse, the olden days, where the kitchen was a kitchen where people could sit together and eat together and laugh together, so it was a community place. And you come now to the point where you have tiny little apartments with very tiny kitchens, and people just dial around and get food sent in from outside or go eat outside. And so that original idea of cooking with love and God's remembrance and then sharing food with that love, which was then very tasty, but also very healthy. Those vibrations were impacting body and soul. And that makes a big difference also, rather than just going and buying processed food and using that. And of course, the expense if you cook at home, very different to what it is if you eat outside.
Santanu, before you come in, could I just follow up with what Sister Jayanti just said? Sister, they're making apartments without kitchens now. They have a TV set, giant-sized, and next to it a microwave to heat the food you ordered. And I think this alienation from food is a very deep crisis, a spiritual crisis, but it's a health crisis, the root of the health crisis, because ultra-processed food is now identified for being responsible for 75% of the chronic diseases we are suffering from. And it's a pandemic. And whether it's for climate change or it's the health pandemic, we will have to, start growing with love again, growing food with love again. And we'll have to start bringing food back into our homes, our kitchens, our communities, and celebrating it as a sacred gift. Because it always has been a sacred gift. There's no culture that doesn't treat food as sacred. Every religion of the world has its sacrament with food, with bread. And we need to start bringing back that honoring of food again. And more importantly than anything else, realizing that bread is supposed to be shared.
Beautiful. Agree with everything you've said.
I mean, I really don't want to break this beautiful conversation between two long lost, now found friends, it seems like. Because as much as I am enjoying, I'm sure all our viewers would be also enjoying this beautiful, in-depth conversation. It's not just about food, but it is also about the emotions that food naturally is able to bring out of people. It's, I think, one of the most emotive tools and most powerful tools to connect with people's heart. And that's why people say, if you want to get to somebody's heart, it goes through the track is through the stomach. But if I have to ask few questions just to
Sure.
bring it to the topic of this year's food day, when Jayanti, also you mentioned that water is food and water is life. My question first goes to you, Jayanti, that even in many spiritual traditions, in many religious traditions, there's a very in-depth regard for the element of water. But as you see in our present lifestyle, maybe that is being lost somewhere, and people are not thinking that how water is sacred. Yes, water gives us life, but do you think losing this aspect of sacredness from water is making us exhausted or not use it properly? What do you see is the relationship between water, spirituality, and our present lifestyle?
You're absolutely true, correct. What it is that we've totally lost contact with that which is the sacred part of life. So not just water, but it begins even with myself. We've lost contact with the spiritual being that we pronounce that I am. And so without that connection, then of course I lose contact with nature. Generally, I don't see nature as being sacred. Water, of course, is sacred. Food is sacred, and all of these things are part of nature also. And so when I begin to understand my own inner being as the being that I am, a spiritual, sacred being, then I treat you with that sanctity. And there isn't that disrespect and dishonoring or conflict that we see around us today. But it's because we don't understand that sacred aspect of life that we see all of this conflict. But of course, all that then goes further than to animals and other species. Again, we don't realize that they're sacred and they have a right to live on this planet. And what we've been doing is destroying them in one way or another, whether it's for food or whether it's beauty and all of this other stuff. And then the next is that, of course, we've actually destroyed our home because we haven't understood that aspect of sanctity again. And so water, very much part of that whole story of our relationship that has been forgotten. And yes, water is sacred. And in all spiritual ceremonies, water plays some role or another. You were right, Vandana, when you mentioned that every tradition has a role for water within its ceremonies, especially festivals and so on. And so coming back to the awareness of the being that I am, the sacred being, the soul, then I'm going to see animals, nature, water with that vision of respect and love. And of course, because we haven't treated water with that respect, I heard, stories about Chile when 2019 COP was supposed to happen in Chile, and then it got diverted to Madrid because of the riots. But why were there riots? The riots were happening because everything within the environment had been breaking down. There was a problem with drought, but also so much of the water there had been taken over by multinational companies to produce soft drinks, fizzy drinks. I won't mention names here, but that was the reality that they were talking about. And so can you imagine a country where people are rioting because they don't have access to what should be a normal human right, water, basic. that it had been sold by the government to multinationals to produce fizzy drinks, probably more for people in the rich countries rather than the poor countries. So yes, very, very important to bring the whole aspect of that which is sacred and that which is meant to be seen with that spirit and vision of that which is benefit for life and that life depends on. And so we have to go back to those basic understandings, the fundamental principles of life.
Thank you so much, Antiban, about that. And when you say bringing back into our practice, bringing back into our awareness that not just the water is sacred, I am also sacred. And this awareness helps me to treat everyone with a lot of reverence, a lot of respect. Mm, Connecting this question to you, Vandanaji, you see there, when you were sharing about the connection between growing millets and growing organically, how it adds more water into the soil moisture, and it is also bringing back water. You said build back water. Do you think, as a common person, maybe an IT engineer or somebody living and sitting all the time in front of a computer, living in an urban environment, do I have a role to play in this building back
I think
water?
everyone who is alive because of food and water. And therefore, each of us, no matter where we live, has a duty to respect water and respect food and to support the systems that regenerate life on earth, conserve water, conserve soil, conserve biodiversity. Sister Jayanti talked about the Chilean riots. Now, in 2002, I was invited to a little village in Kerala called Plachimata. And it's tribal women who called me for Earth Day. And I went because, they were resisting the fizzy drink giants who were mining 1.5 liters per day. And they left a water famine. And the women were walking 10 miles to get water. They said, we had enough water in our wells. And now we are walking 10 miles. How much further can we walk? Now we must stop this company. And they started the satyagraha, the action that comes from love and the power of truth. Gandhi's word for not cooperating with something that's destructive. And 2 years later, we all worked together. I supported them with mobilization. I supported them with, legal cases. And more importantly, if I had more room on my wall, I'd have a poster called Pepsi Quit India, because they actually take 10 times more water out of the community than they put in the fizzy drink or in the water bottle. But then the fizzy drink then gives you diabetes, creates obesity. So everyone is losing except the giants. I do think everyone could be in IT, could be in finance, no matter what you're doing. You eat and you drink. You can eat and drink with consciousness. And because you're in an extremely privileged place, you earn a lot if you're in IT and you earn a lot if you're in the financial world. First and foremost, put that money to taking care of your health and eat with consciousness. But I would say, we are very fortunate because we do this 1 month course on regeneration, on return to earth, growing food in ways that actually regenerates the earth rather than degenerates her. And the same applies for human health. And we get a lot of IT and finance people because, those careers bring you a lot of money, but they sap you. And these young people who've made lots and lots of money are getting burnt out very early. And so many of them want to now become organic farmers, and they come to us to learn, and they do. I think one of the things I should do is somehow make a list of everyone who's become an organic farmer, having been in another profession earlier. So I think eating with consciousness, drinking with consciousness, realizing we are not individuals who are merely consumers, realizing we are part of an earth family, that we are part of a community, always keeping in mind what's happening to others through my consumption. Am I part of ensuring that everyone has food and water? Or am I part of the deprivation that is causing hunger and thirst? And we all can be part of the solution. And it doesn't matter where you live. You could be in a high rise, but what you eat and drink is not shaped by the high rise. It's shaped by your consciousness. So let your consciousness guide your everyday life.
Wow.
Beautifully put.
So, yeah, I was just about to, bring this word consciousness back to you, Sister Jayanti, because somehow I believe that yes, Vandanaji is right that if I am conscious, I will choose better. But what about my habits? Because sometimes my habits are so powerful that I'm not able to, make a shift. How do you comment on that?
I think that once you can try it in a very gentle way, try eating food that is very tasty, but is also plant based. And if you do that, then very quickly you learn that your palate is being tickled by many other different tastes, and the old habits can pass away very quickly. And so that's one gentle way to approach it. And the other way to approach it is absolutely pure logic. Do I want the human species to survive? Do I want the planet to continue? And if I do, then I have to make a switch. And I cannot continue with old habits and old lifestyles anymore. I think climate change is now not a figment of a few scientists' imagination. It's demonstrated that it's very, very real. And the tragedies that happen through climate change are really very, very sad. And we're seeing more and more of this across the world, and not just in the south, but we're also seeing things happen in the north, the wildfires in Canada, in Europe, in Greece, especially we see in many different aspects, floods happening. So people, I think, are now ready to listen and to understand that if I want to contribute in a positive way, yes, as Vandana said, with consciousness, how am I living my life? What are the choices I'm making? And maybe I'm not just thinking about myself, but I'm thinking about the future generations to come. And so, can I think about the future and not just have the selfishness of what I like and what I want, but rather to think about my human family? And there's this lovely slogan that's been it was actually again taken up in the G20, but of course it's been around for centuries in India, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and it means we are one family. And of course, people have forgotten this. And so when water comes in one side of the boat, I can't say sitting on the other side of the boat, it's never going to reach me. The water is going to come creeping in, and it's definitely going to reach me also, and it's already doing that. So I think that when people understand that they can make a conscious choice to contribute either to well-being or to further disaster, I think they'll begin